I'd like to start out, and I just want to say that when Captain Flannery asked me to talk on Memorial Day, I was taken back. It's quite an honor to do this, and I'm truly honored. You know, and I asked myself, I said, who am I to speak about America's fallen warriors? Who am I? And I thought about this for a long time, and I realized that as an American, I have a personal responsibility to remember them and to speak for them. And that every free American shares that responsibility. Every American, no matter how they choose to live or choose what to believe in, can directly trace that unique American freedom to those who felt that freedom and liberty were more important than their own lives. The history of the American warrior and the sacrifices they've made on the battlefield is the thread that binds us all together. From the beginning of the Republic, Americans have been asked to fight from the Arctic Circle, the fields of Europe, the jungles of Asia, to the deserts of Africa and the Middle East. Our Navy has fought in every ocean, and our Air Force has fought in the skies of Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Whether it's land, sea, or air, countless Americans have found their final resting place in cemeteries across the world, or at the bottom of deep oceans, while too many others will never be found. These are the stories that every American should know. The stories of warriors ensuring the freedom of their countrymen at the cost of their own lives. I'd be honored to tell a few of those stories here this morning. I'd like to tell the story of a legendary Marine. His name was John Basilone. Gunnery Sergeant Basilone became a Marine Corps legend during the fight for Guadalcanal in October 1942 during the Battle of Henderson Field. His unit came under attack by a regiment of approximately 3,000 soldiers from the Japanese Sendai Division. On October 24th, Japanese forces began a frontal attack using machine guns, grenades, mortars, everything they could muster against American heavy machine guns positions. Sergeant Basilone commanded 2 sections of machine guns that fought for the next 2 days until only Sergeant Basilone and 2 other Marines were left standing. Sergeant Basilone moved an extra gun into position and maintained continual fire against the incoming Japanese forces. He then repaired and manned another machine gun, holding the defensive line until replacements arrived. As the battle went on, ammunition became critically low. Despite their supply lines having been cut off by enemies in the rear, Basilone alone fought through hostile ground to resupply his heavy machine gunners with urgently needed ammunition. When the last of it ran out shortly before dawn on the second day, Basilone held off the Japanese soldiers attacking his position using his pistol and a machete. By the end of the engagement, Japanese forces opposite their section of the line were virtually annihilated, and for his actions during the battle, he received the United States military's highest award for valor, the Medal of Honor. After his actions, he was sent stateside for the next 2 years. He made multiple requests to return to his Marines fighting in the Pacific, and was finally assigned to the 27th Regiment of the 5th Marine Division and participated in the attack on Iwo Jima. He was killed in action while trying to take one of the airfields on the island. For his individual valor on Iwo Jima, he was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross. Sergeant Basilone is the only Marine ever to be awarded both the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross. The story of this heroic American who valued his country and his Marine Corps above his own life is our story. It belongs to every American. The unbroken line of heroic and dedicated warriors has continued today. I'd like to tell the story of Lance Corporal Jordan Harder and Corporal Jonathan Yale, 2 young Marines who were fighting in Ramadi, Iraq on April 22nd, 2008. These 2 young Marines had never met each other before this fateful day. They were assigned to man the entry checkpoint for the Marine compound where 150 Marines and other Iraqis were garrisoned. Shortly after these 2 had manned their position, a suicide bomber in a cement truck packed with 2,000 pounds of explosives turned down the street and began winding its way through the barricades. The 2 Marines killed the driver of the truck and got it stopped just a few yards from the gate before it detonated, killing both young men. The video of the incident clearly shows Iraqi soldiers running from danger while the 2 Marines stood and fought like the lions they were. I'd like to quote General John Kelly when he spoke at his Marines. By all reports and by the recording, they never stepped back, they never stepped to the side, they never even shifted their weight. With their feet spread shoulder width apart, they leaned into the danger, firing as fast as they could, work their weapons. They didn't have enough time to think about their families, their country, their flag, or about their lives or their deaths. But more than enough time for two very brave young men to do their duty into eternity. That's the kind of people who are on watch all over the world tonight for you. I'd like to add that General Kelly spoke of these heroes only 4 years after his own son was killed in combat in Afghanistan. Again, these are the stories that belong to every American. These are the eternal warriors who have cemented our liberty with their grit, their blood, and their courage. My next story goes back to 1984, when I began the medical portion of my Special Forces training. The current class of Special Forces medics were arriving at the barracks, and I met Sergeant Rocco Barnes, a soldier from the 20th Special Forces Group, and he and I became instant friends. We went through extremely difficult and trying medical course, which culminated in Fort Bragg many months later. During this long and arduous course of training, Rocco and I had become brothers in arms. He was my best friend, and as training ended, I returned to the 19th Group, and he returned to the 20th. Shortly after that, we were lucky enough to work together on a very dangerous job for several months before we parted ways. I never saw Rocco again. I often thought of Rocco, and by accident, I learned that he was killed in Afghanistan on June 4th, 2009. I hadn't seen Rocco for many years. And upon learning of his death, memories of he and I flooded back. I learned that Rocco had attained the rank of major and was killed on his 4th combat tour. To tell you the kind of soldier that Rocco was, even as a major, he was manning the .50 caliber turret in the Humvee he was riding in. Anyone with any service experience knows that majors do not man the .50 in armored vehicles. But after reading as much as I could about my good friend, I learned that Rocco simply led from the front. That didn't surprise me at all, because Rocco was a natural leader and a patriot of the highest order. It's truly a great honor to speak of my good friend here this morning. Dea Pressa Libre, my brother. For those of us that served and have served, Memorial Day holds an eternal and special meaning. For we all know men and women that we proudly served with that did not return. These men and women hopped into a vehicle, climbed into a helicopter, walked down a trail, or cleared a room, not knowing that it would be their last act upon the earth. Yet they performed these tasks without hesitation, and with the thought that they would be among their friends and brothers in arms later that day, or perhaps in a few days. No other soldiers on the face of the earth and throughout history have served their country more faithfully and sacrificed more than United States fighting men and women. From the uncertain days of the American Revolution to the continuing combat of 2017, over 1.1 million Americans have given their lives on a battlefield somewhere across the planet. That's 1.1 million stories that can never be forgotten. That's 1.1 million silent sentinels that eternally guard this free republic. They did their duty. We as Americans must do ours and always remember these warriors, respect their courage, and honor their sacrifice. I'd like to conclude my remarks with a statement made by then Secretary of State Colin Powell. Powell was making a presentation to the World Economic Forum in Switzerland in 2003 when the former Archbishop of Canterbury asked Secretary Powell if the U.S. was relying too much on hard power and not enough on the soft power of diplomacy. The implication being asserted was the false notion of American imperialism. Secretary Powell's response was short but profound in its meaning. He answered by saying, over the years, America has sent many fine young men and women into great peril to fight for freedom beyond our borders. The only land we have ever asked for is enough land to bury those that did not return. That simple yet powerful statement will eternally honor those American warriors wherever they rest. Thank you all very much. It's been an honor to address you this morning. God bless America, and God bless our war.